I've been trucking for over 2 decades, and the open road has been both my livelihood and my companion. But there's one night, one stretch of highway, that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I recall it. It was a cold winter night, and I was hauling a load of electronics through a desolate part of the Midwest. The snow was falling gently, creating a serene but isolating landscape. The only company I had was the soft hum of the engine and the static chatter on the CB radio. As I drove through the quiet night, I spotted a figure on the side of the road, a silhouette barely visible through the falling snow. Against my better judgment, I decided to pull over. The hitchhiker, a woman in a tattered coat, looked frozen to the bone. I felt a pang of sympathy and opened the passenger door to offer her a ride. She climbed in without saying a word, her eyes staring straight ahead. I tried to strike up a conversation, but she remained silent. Her presence was unnerving, and the cab of the truck seemed to grow colder with every passing mile. I could see my breath in the air as I navigated the winding roads, the only sound the crunch of tires on snow-covered asphalt. I asked her where she was headed, but she continued to stare, her face pale in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. The CB radio crackled with reports of a storm ahead, advising drivers to be cautious. I tightened my grip on the wheel, feeling the weight of the night closing in. As we approached a particularly desolate stretch of road, the hitchhiker finally spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Stop the truck." Startled, I glanced at her, but her eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. I asked her why, but she repeated the command with an urgency that sent a chill down my spine. Reluctantly, I pulled the truck to the side of the road. "Here," she said, pointing to a spot in the snow-covered fields. Confused and uneasy, I asked her what was wrong. "You need to let me out here. They're waiting for me." I peered into the darkness, but there was nothing but the howling wind and the swirling snow. She opened the door, and a blast of frigid air filled the cab. As she stepped out, she turned to me, her eyes reflecting an otherworldly fear. "Thank you," she said, her voice carried away by the wind. "You saved me." Before I could respond, she vanished into the snowy night. I sat there for a moment, the engine idling, the feeling of unease lingering. I shook off the encounter as a strange, isolated incident and continued my journey. Days later, I heard a news report about a woman who had gone missing in that very area. The image on the screen sent a shock through my system. It was the hitchhiker. The reporter mentioned that she had disappeared during a snowstorm, leaving no trace behind. The memory haunted me, the phantom hitchhiker and her urgent plea. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been a part of something otherworldly that night. As I continue to drive the highways, I can't help but wonder if she found the salvation she sought or if her ghost still roams that desolate stretch of road, forever lost in the winter night. It was a humid night on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama. Mark, a burly truck driver with a bushy beard and a penchant for classic rock, was navigating his rig through the lonely backroads. He had been on the road for hours and was eager to reach his destination, a small town nestled in the southern hills. The GPS directed Mark to take a shortcut, a narrow 2-lane road that seemed to stretch endlessly through dense woods. The dense canopy of trees cast eerie shadows, and the only sounds were the whir of his tires on the asphalt and the occasional hoot of an owl. Mark could feel the tension building, but he chalked it up to the isolation of the rural route. As he approached a curve, Mark spotted a figure on the shoulder. A hitchhiker, thumb outstretched in the classic gesture. It was an odd sight at this time of night, but Mark, being the friendly type, decided to pull over. The man, with unkempt hair and a worn-out denim jacket, climbed into the cab. "Thanks, brother. Been waiting out here forever," the hitchhiker said, his voice gravelly. Mark nodded, uneasy but trying not to show it. As the truck resumed its journey, the hitchhiker stared out into the darkness, seemingly lost in thought. The truck's interior became charged with an unspoken tension. After a few minutes of awkward silence, the hitchhiker spoke, his tone low and conspiratorial. "You know, this road has a history. Strange things happen here, especially at night." Mark raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. The hitchhiker went on to share tales of ghostly apparitions, phantom vehicles, and mysterious disappearances that had plagued this stretch of road for decades. Mark dismissed it as local folklore at first, but as the stories grew darker, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the truck rumbled along, the hitchhiker's demeanor shifted. His eyes gleamed in the dim light, and he spoke in a hushed, urgent tone. "You've got to watch out for the phantom trucker. They say he picks up hitchhikers, and they're never seen again." Chills ran down Mark's spine. He stole a glance at the hitchhiker, who now seemed more like a harbinger of doom than a weary traveler. The atmosphere inside the truck grew thick with unease. Suddenly, the hitchhiker pointed to the rearview mirror, his expression twisted in fear. "He's behind us. Step on it." Mark's heart pounded as he checked the mirror. In the distance, he could see the faint glow of headlights, seemingly gaining on them. Panic set in, and he floored the gas pedal. The engine roared, but the phantom trucker relentlessly closed the gap. As the ghostly headlights drew nearer, Mark could feel an overwhelming sense of dread. The hitchhiker pleaded with him to go faster, his voice bordering on hysteria. The ghostly truck's headlights cast an otherworldly glow on the road ahead. Just when Mark thought all was lost, the phantom truck abruptly vanished, leaving nothing but the echoes of its spectral engine. The hitchhiker slumped in relief, muttering thanks under his breath. Mark pulled over, his hands trembling. The hitchhiker got out without a word, disappearing into the night. Mark sat there for a moment, trying to make sense of the surreal experience. As he continued his journey, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had narrowly escaped a brush with the supernatural on that desolate Alabama road. It was a cold, moonless night when Jordan found himself stranded on the desolate highway. His beat-up sedan had decided to call it quits in the middle of nowhere. With no cell reception and miles between gas stations, he was left with no choice but to hitchhike. After what felt like an eternity, a flickering pair of headlights emerged from the darkness. A massive, rusty old truck rumbled to a stop, its engine growling like a beast. The driver's silhouette was barely visible through the grimy windshield. Jordan hesitated, but the biting wind and his growing desperation convinced him to take the risk. Opening the creaking door, Jordan was met with the overpowering scent of stale cigarettes and motor oil. The trucker's gruff voice welcomed him, introducing himself as Randy. His weathered face and a thick, graying beard made him look like a seasoned road warrior. As the truck roared back to life, Randy's eyes darted towards Jordan, sizing him up in the rearview mirror. A chill ran down Jordan's spine, but he dismissed it as paranoia. They drove in silence for what seemed like hours, the only sound the rhythmic hum of the tires on the asphalt. Randy finally broke the silence, his gravelly voice revealing a hint of unsettling amusement. He started recounting tales of the road, each one darker than the last. Stories of hitchhikers who mysteriously vanished and towns that time forgot. Jordan forced a nervous chuckle, trying to brush off the mounting unease. As the miles passed, the atmosphere inside the truck grew heavier. Randy's stories took a sinister turn, and Jordan's discomfort escalated. He began to notice strange symbols etched into the dashboard, almost like a twisted code. Randy caught him staring and grinned, revealing yellowed teeth that seemed to reflect the dim glow of the dashboard lights. The truck pulled off the highway onto a narrow, winding road that led deep into the woods. Panic set in as Jordan's mind raced through the possibilities. Randy's sinister laughter echoed through the cab as he accelerated, the trees closing in around them like looming specters. Desperation took hold of Jordan as he fumbled for his phone, praying for even a sliver of signal. No luck. The road twisted and turned, becoming increasingly treacherous. Randy's laughter grew more maniacal with each passing mile. Suddenly, the truck screeched to a halt in front of an abandoned shack, surrounded by dense, foreboding woods. Randy turned to Jordan, his eyes gleaming with madness. Before Jordan could react, Randy lunged at him with a rusty knife, the glint of metal catching the dim light. With adrenaline pumping, Jordan fought back with everything he had. The struggle was fierce, the truck cab feeling like a cage of horrors. In a desperate move, Jordan managed to push Randy away and scramble out of the truck. He sprinted into the woods, the chilling echoes of Randy's enraged screams fading behind him. Lost and disoriented, Jordan stumbled upon a remote gas station where he finally called for help. Randy was long gone by the time the authorities arrived. To this day, Jordan shudders at the memory of that night, haunted by the thought that he narrowly escaped a trucker's twisted game on the lonely highways of the unknown.